Britain's Queen Elizabeth has been unable to attend the UK's remembrance service at the Cenotaph in London. Buckingham Palace says she's suffering from a sprained back and greatly regretted not being able to go. Prince Charles represented Queen Elizabeth at the Cenotaph. Events have been held around the world to remember the millions who died in global conflicts. The president of the COP26 climate summit has said China and India will have to explain their reasons for not agreeing to phase out the use of coal. The two nations did agree to phase down use, and there is still concern that wealthy developed nations are not paying enough to the global south to help fund change. Austria has responded to a surge in COVID cases by announcing a new lockdown from Monday. Unvaccinated people will face tough restrictions on their movements.
Japan's health authorities will begin shipping 4 million coronavirus vaccine doses for a third round of shots. They will be made available to municipalities and medical facilities across the country on Monday. This comes after last week's approval of Pfizer's vaccine booster shots. NHK has learned that Japan's health ministry is arranging to allow booster shots for people who received their second doses at least 6 months earlier. The ministry is considering keeping an interval of roughly 8 months or more as a standard in line with the initial plan. Such vaccinations are due to start for medical workers next month and for elderly and other citizens in January. Sources say the ministry took into account overseas reports suggesting that the efficacy of vaccines begin to decline 6 months after the second shot. The sources add that the ministry plans to present the new proposal and its advisory panel of experts on Monday. The ministry also plans to have a panel of experts evaluate the efficacy and safety of using a combination of Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, as some other countries have done. Authorities are considering whether to approve Moderna's vaccine for booster shots by the end of the year. They would start giving them from March next year at locations such as companies and universities. The family of a Japanese woman abducted by North Korea 44 years ago has made a new appeal to Japan's government to take concrete steps to bring back all the abductees. Yokota Megumi was abducted by North Korean agents on November 15, 1977, on her way home from junior high school. She was 13 years old. Her mother, Sakie, took part in an event held on Sunday via video link.
なんで帰れないんだろうかと本当に思いながら、もうどんなに虚しい思いで暮らしているかといつも思います。心を一つにして取り戻していただく。
Megumi's younger brother, Tetsuya, said the North is not coming to the negotiation table. Pyongyang insists that the matter has been settled. He urged the Japanese government to use all possible means to achieve a breakthrough. Japan's chief cabinet secretary says abductees are still the administration's most important issue.
The government will continue to work closely with the United States and other countries and do its utmost to realize the return of all the abductees as soon as possible.
Japan's government says North Korean agents abducted at least 17 Japanese citizens in the 1970s and 80s. 5 were repatriated after a bilateral summit in 2002. 12 remain unaccounted for. Major Japanese automakers have cut their unit sales forecast for fiscal 2021 due to shortages of semiconductors and other auto parts. The 7 companies' combined total sales outlook dropped by more than 2 million vehicles in the year through March, compared with their previous forecasts. Auto firms announced revised sales forecasts along with their midterm earnings reports. Toyota cut its forecast for its group companies to 10.29 million vehicles, down 260,000 from its previous forecast. Honda slashed its outlook by 650,000 to 4.2 million vehicles. Nissan expects to sell 3.8 million vehicles, down 600,000 from its former plans. All other automakers had a similar story. Suzuki, Subaru, Mazda, and Mitsubishi also announced lower unit sales forecasts. The coronavirus pandemic worsened a global chip shortage and led to parts supply disruptions in Southeast Asia. This led to production cuts and forced the auto companies to trim their outlooks. Conditions are now gradually improving. Toyota expects its domestic factories to return to normal in December for the first time in 7 months, but the supply issues may linger for some other automakers. The oldest daughter of Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte has filed to run in next year's vice presidential election. The filing deadline was in October, but Sara Duterte was able to register on Saturday. This is because she took the place of her party's original candidate who withdrew. Filings by substitutes are due on Monday. One candidate in the presidential race is Ferdinand Marcos Jr. He's the son of the late former dictator, and he's believed to have friendly ties with the current president. Duterte cannot run himself because the country's constitution limits presidents to a single term. Analysts say Duterte wants Marcos Jr. to be president and his own daughter to be vice president. Then he could maintain his influence over the next government. Other presidential candidates include Manny Pacquiao, Francisco Domagoso, and Lenny Robredo. Pacquiao is a senator and a retired world-class boxing champion. Domagoso is the mayor of Manila. Robredo is a human rights lawyer who is currently vice president. Philippine voters will cast their ballots in May next year to choose their president and vice president. A massive riot at a prison in Ecuador has left at least 68 people dead and 25 injured. It's the latest in a wave of prison violence that has been sweeping the country in the past year. Prosecutors say the violence broke out on Friday at a prison in the western city of Guayaquil and lasted for about 8 hours. Local media outlets say rival gangs with links to international drug cartels were fighting for control of the facility. The reports also say members of criminal organizations bribed officers and were able to bring guns and explosives inside. 118 inmates were killed in a similar incident at the same prison in September, prompting Ecuadorian President Guillermo Lasso to declare a state of emergency. An earlier riot in February left 79 dead. Japanese figure skater Uno Shoma says he wants to keep competing at the highest level ahead of the Beijing Winter Olympics that begin in less than 3 months.
Until today, I've been practicing hard to make my own program. But I don't want to decide this is my limit. I want to keep looking ahead and improve my skills.
Uno won the men's event at the NHK Trophy competition on Saturday. He tried 5 quadruple jumps in the free skating, marking a personal best score of 290.15. The silver medalist at the Pyeongchang Games says he is training to become the best skater in the world. Uno qualified for the Grand Prix final in December with Saturday's win. Double Olympic champion Hanyu Yuzuru withdrew from the competition after injuring his right ankle. Those were the stories for this hour.